There's a difference most people never think to make between being alone and being lonely. And if you're someone who genuinely prefers your own company, not because social situations scare you, not because something went wrong, not because you're waiting for the right person to come along and fix it, then you already know the difference from the inside. You've just never heard anyone describe it accurately. Because the world has a script for people like you. And the script goes like this: something must be missing. You must be sad about it somewhere, even if you don't show it. You must secretly want more. And every time you say you're fine, people hear it as a cover story rather than an actual answer. This video is about what's actually happening in people who choose solitude. Not the sad version. The real one. 1. Your relationship with yourself is genuinely functional. This sounds obvious until you consider how rare it actually is. Most people are uncomfortable alone because being alone means being with their own thoughts, and their own thoughts are not particularly good company. The silence gets loud fast. The mind fills it with anxiety, self-criticism, unfinished business from 3 years ago. For you, that silence isn't something to escape. It's something you move around in comfortably. You have an interior life that's rich enough to occupy you. Not because you're special, but because you've spent enough time in your own company to build something there. Psychologists studying what they call self-concept clarity, the degree to which a person's sense of self is stable and coherent, consistently find that people with high solitude preference scores significantly higher on this measure. You know who you are in a way that doesn't require constant external confirmation. That's not isolation. That's a specific kind of groundedness. 2. Social interaction costs you something real, and you've learned to budget it honestly. This isn't about disliking people. Most people who prefer solitude have relationships they genuinely value, conversations they find deeply satisfying, connections that matter to them. The difference is that social engagement has a price for them that it doesn't have for everyone. Psychologists describe this through the framework of social battery, the idea that extroverts recharge through connection while introverts deplete in it. But for people who prefer genuine solitude, it goes further than introversion. It's not just that interaction is tiring. It's that the return to aloneness feels like returning to something rather than retreating from something. You're not hiding. You're restoring. And the distinction matters enormously, because one implies damage and the other implies design. 3. You have a higher tolerance for your own internal weather. Emotions, for most people, become more manageable when they're shared. Talking through something distributes its weight. For people who prefer solitude, there's a different mechanism. The processing happens internally, slowly, thoroughly. Feelings get examined rather than expressed, understood rather than released. This is not suppression. Suppression is pushing something down without looking at it. What solitude-preferring people often do is the opposite. They look at it longer and more carefully than most, just privately. Research on what psychologists call affect regulation shows that solitary processing, when done with genuine engagement rather than avoidance, produces outcomes comparable to social processing. Sometimes better. The person who sits with something alone isn't necessarily doing it wrong. They may simply not need an audience to think clearly. 4. You're more selective, not more closed. There's a version of this trait that looks, from the outside, like coldness. Like you don't let people in. Like you keep a distance that isn't warranted. And sometimes people take it personally in a way that's genuinely unfair to both of you. What's actually true is that you let very few people fully in, and the ones you let in you hold with a particular kind of steadiness. The friendships are fewer and deeper. The conversations, when they happen, tend to mean something. You're not performing closeness while privately staying separate. You're just selective about where you put real connection. Researcher Robert Weiss distinguished decades ago between social loneliness, the absence of a network, and emotional loneliness, the absence of genuine closeness. People who prefer solitude are often not lonely by either measure. They have what they need. It just looks smaller from the outside than the world thinks it should. 5. Solitude is where you actually think. Not where you go when you can't cope. Where you go when you need to actually process something at full capacity. The noise of constant social presence, the performance of availability, the management of other people's energy, the low-level processing tax of just being around others, cuts into something for you in a way that makes real thinking difficult. Alone, that tax disappears. The thinking gets cleaner. The ideas get further. Research on creative cognition consistently shows that uninterrupted solitary thought produces deeper associative processing, the kind that connects distant concepts, finds non-obvious solutions, generates original ideas. The world calls this introversion. It is also, quietly, a cognitive advantage. 6. You're not waiting. You're actually here. This is the one that tends to land hardest. The assumption underneath most concern about people who prefer solitude is that they're in a holding pattern. That real life is somewhere out there in the crowd, and they're just waiting to be ready for it. But for people who genuinely choose aloneness, there's no waiting happening. The quiet Saturday isn't a placeholder for a fuller life. It is the life. The morning routine. The particular light at a specific time of day. The long thought that goes somewhere interesting. The book that gets finished. These things aren't consolation prizes. They're the actual contents of a life that was never going to look like someone else's. Psychologist Esther Buchholz spent years arguing that solitude isn't the opposite of connection. It's what makes genuine connection possible. The person who is comfortable alone brings something different to relationship than the person who needs it to function. They choose it rather than requiring it. And that choice changes the quality of everything. Here's what none of this means. It doesn't mean you never want company. It doesn't mean the preference is absolute, or that there's no such thing as too much alone. It doesn't mean you've got everything figured out, or that the solitude is always clean and comfortable. Sometimes it isn't. But there's a version of this trait that the world keeps pathologizing because it doesn't fit the template. Because the template says more is more, that the full life is the visible life, that being with yourself is something you do when you can't be with other people rather than something you actively choose. You've known for a long time that isn't true. You just haven't always had the language to explain it without sounding defensive. You weren't defending something broken. You were describing something that works.